Have you ever wondered how some families seem to protect their assets and seamlessly pass them down through generations? Well, one of the most powerful tools in their playbook is something called a personal trust. And today, we're going to break down exactly how this legal structure can be an absolute game changer for both your tax planning and your estate management.
So let's dive right in. Here's our game plan. First, we'll get a solid handle on what a personal trust actually is. Then, we're going to jump into two incredibly powerful tax strategies, the estate freeze and strategic income splitting. After that, we'll look at the other equally important job of a trust, its administrative power, before we pull it all together.
Okay, first things first. Before we can get into all the clever strategies, we have to start with the foundation. What exactly is a personal trust? At its heart, a trust is a relationship between three parties. You have the settlor, that's the person putting assets into the trust. Then you have the trustee, who's the manager taking care of those assets. And finally, you have the beneficiaries, the people who ultimately benefit from it all. Now, there are two main flavors you need to know: inter vivos trusts, which you create while you're alive, and testamentary trusts, which are created by your will after you pass. And believe me, that distinction is going to be really important as we go on. All right, now for the really interesting stuff. Let's see how a trust can be used to tackle a huge problem for successful family businesses, that ever-growing tax liability that's waiting down the line. I mean, think about it. Your business is thriving, which is fantastic. But as its value goes up, so does the capital gains tax bill that will eventually come due. If you do nothing, that tax liability can become a massive burden on the next generation. So how do you stop the clock on that tax? The answer is a brilliant strategy known as an estate freeze. And the name really says it all. The goal is to freeze the value of your assets for tax purposes, right where they stand today. So how does this actually work? It's basically a three-step process. First, the parent takes their common shares, the ones that are growing in value, and exchanges them for new preferred shares that have a fixed value. Step 2, the company issues a new batch of common shares. These are the ones that will capture all the future growth. And finally, step 3, these new growth shares are transferred into a trust for the children. And here's the beautiful result. Before the freeze, the parent's tax liability was a moving target, getting bigger every single year. But after the freeze, their tax liability is capped. It's frozen. All that amazing future growth is now happening inside the children's trust, meaning that future tax problem is now theirs to manage, but on their own terms. Okay, let's pivot to our second strategy. We're shifting our focus now from the big tax bill at death to something that can affect you every year, your income tax. And we're going to talk about income splitting. Now, before you can split income, you have to understand the main roadblock, the attribution rules. The tax authorities are smart. They know that someone in a high tax bracket might be tempted to just give their investments to their child in a low tax bracket. These rules say, nope, not so fast. The income is attributed right back to you and taxed at your higher rate. But, and this is a big but, there are some perfectly legal ways to work with these rules. And here are two of the biggest opportunities. First, capital gains. This is a huge one. Any capital gains realized on property inside a trust for a minor child are not attributed back to the parent. They get taxed at the child's lower rate. Second, and this one is fascinating, is a rule about reinvested income, what some people call income on income. Let's make this crystal clear. Say a parent puts a bond into a trust. The interest that bond pays every year, that gets attributed back to the parent. But what if the trust takes that interest and reinvests it into something else? Well, any new income earned from that reinvestment is taxed in the child's low tax bracket. Over many years, that can make a massive difference. And remember, those testamentary trusts we talked about? The ones created by a will? Well, here's another key feature. Once the settlor passes away, the attribution rules just vanish. They no longer apply. This makes testamentary trusts an incredibly effective way to split income among surviving children, allowing each of them to use their own low tax rates to minimize the family's overall tax bill. So we've spent a lot of time on tax strategies, and they are incredibly powerful. But it is absolutely vital to understand that this isn't the only reason trusts exist. Often, the most important benefits have nothing to do with tax at all. So let's just ask the question. If you took taxes completely out of the equation, why would you still want to set up a trust? Well, the answers get right to the very heart of what good estate planning is all about. And these benefits are incredibly personal. A trust is a perfect vehicle to manage property for someone who can't, like a minor child or a relative with special needs. It lets you direct your legacy, laying out your specific wishes for generations. You can use it to preserve assets, maybe earmarking funds only for education to prevent them from being wasted. And what's truly amazing, you can even use a trust to hold property for beneficiaries who haven't even been born yet, ensuring your future grandchildren are taken care of.
Okay, let's bring it all home. We've covered a lot of ground, so let's synthesize the key takeaways here. If there is one thing to remember, it's this: the dual power of a trust. This isn't just a tax tool, and it isn't just an administrative tool. It's a single, elegant structure that allows you to achieve both strategic tax goals and deep personal control over your assets.
This quote really just says it all, doesn't it? The key words there are unique and flexible. The ability to tailor a trust to meet the very specific financial and personal goals of your family is what makes it such an enduring and indispensable planning tool.
So, I'll leave you with this final thought to reflect on. As you think about your own long-term financial future, which of these powerful tools, the estate freeze, the income splitting, the simple administrative control, could have the biggest impact for you? It's a question well worth asking.